Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we dive into the stories of hands-on leaders, builders, and entrepreneurs who have turned their experience into impact. My guest today is Steven Sopko, a global negotiator, leadership expert, and co-founder of Paraseed Compliance, from negotiations with Nobel Prize-winning scientists to helping Fortune 100 team move from fear-based to opportunity-driven leadership. Stephen has built a career around adaptability, communications, and practical leadership. I'm really looking forward to unpacking his journey and lessons we can all apply in our own path. It's really a pleasure having you on the show, Stephen.
That's fantastic, Aro. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, Steve, what was it like growing up for you?
Wow. Well, I grew up on the space coast of Florida, so about 20 miles from where they launch rockets to go to the moon. And growing up in Florida, it was very, you think it's going to be very high tech because they're launching all these rockets. And it wasn't. A lot of the high tech stuff is done elsewhere and they put it on a truck and they send it to Florida and then they push a button and launch it into space, right? So
Yeah.
much of what we do here in Florida is plumbing, it's electrical, it's all of the things that are necessary to run a launch pad and the infrastructure of a launch site. So that's what I grew up with was the most high-tech stuff you can imagine being launched into space, but everything here is very, very normal. I mean, one of my sons is working on one of the launch towers, but he's doing aluminum machining because they have so much aluminum that goes into that tower. So I was just that's that weird stretch between super high tech and super normal was really how I grew up.
Wow.
And so when we lost the Space Shuttle Challenger, one of the space shuttles blew up when they launched it in the late 80s. Suddenly, there were no jobs in Florida anymore. They just shut down completely. So I went into the military and I became a negotiator. And that was where I really learned a lot of how to interact with people, how to make deals, how to make things happen. And so I started out buying ladders in the military, and a few years later, I was negotiating with Nobel Prize winning scientists. Because the neat thing about the military is they don't care whether you can do it or not; they'll just give you the work. And if you don't do it, they'll throw you in prison. It's very motivating. You will figure out how to get that. But so after the military, I bounced around in oil and gas and a bunch of startups, and then I ended up at Dell, the computer company. Again, negotiations with usually small governments, education, healthcare. And after Dell, I went to Oracle, the giant software company, and that's where I ran Europe, Middle East, Africa negotiations. And so that was sort of the spread of my career. But after Oracle, I had this huge personal tragedy. My wife at the time passed away. And so I went from being a father and a husband traveling 80% of the time to a single dad trying to travel 80% of the time. And that just didn't work. So I moved from Europe back home to Florida to be near family and started a company. And that company, Palisade Compliance, helps companies that are being audited by Oracle. So it's just what I did at Oracle, just backwards from the other side of the table. And so very successful company. I exited it last year because I really wanted to start playing with AI and space. And those are the two things I've been doing for the last year and a half. And so what I do today is I mainly mentor founders. I have 6 different companies that I'm working with right now, really trying to help them figure out, okay, this is what we want to do. Who needs it? How do they buy it? And then how can we demonstrate that there's value from it? That's a big part of what I do today.
Wow, that was really, really amazing. And it's the fact that almost all through every business you can think about, a negotiator is actually being needed, and it's cut across every field. And I think what even drew my attention more to those who actually negotiate deals is the fact that when I read Split the Difference, and I saw how a whole lot of things was being said in that particular book, Never Split the Difference. I was like, wow, negotiation is very, very lovely. And I would love to see how they do what they do. And I was like, yeah, it's really amazing. So you have such more like a diverse career with when you were actually younger, what kind of things first caught your attention and inspired you when you were younger, despite there was not much tech stuff in Florida where you were growing up? What first caught your attention?
Mm. Well, it was funny. When I was in the military, there was this book that I read. I was going along. I was in the military. I was negotiating, and then I read this book called Mirror Worlds, and it was by a guy named Professor David Galerter. It came out in the 1990s. And the book was basically what's going to happen when software can describe the world so well that the thing you see running in the box in your monitor is real. It's real time. It is absolutely what's going on right now. And in the 1990s, that seemed very far-fetched. In 2025, it seems normal. This is just, and so reading that book changed me from being political science, negotiations, law into computer science and real-time, real-world use of technology. When I left the military, one of the things I did in oil and gas was telemetry, the things that would sit at the top of an oil rig and beam information back to the oil and gas company headquarters. Just stuff like that just fascinated me. And so that was a real pivot in my life. I went from being everything very much the negotiating the contract to making the deal. And so that was the big thing for me. Early in my career, it was the letters in the contract, the words and how you craft them. Later in my career, it really got into making the deal and making the thing happen. And I think that was the big change for me.
Wow, wow, amazing. Really, really amazing. Just more like analyzing your experience before AI come into being. With the book, which is The Mirror, just getting to see how things play out. I think that was really, really a lovely inspiration. Yeah, see what is happening today. Even as at then, nothing of this was actually more like make reference of, and the possibility was not seen, but seeing it through the eyes of that book, I know it must be very, very more like inspiring. Yeah, thank you. And also, your military experience is very lovely, especially when you're sharing your stories with the fact that the military, they don't even get to test your ability before actually delegating some task. And what will you actually want? Like, because it's really, really lovely. I think I've actually interviewed one or two persons from the military, and it speaks volumes to how responsibility is being delegated part time or into, yeah, they just believe that you have the capacity, even if you don't see it yet. And so, what will you make reference of the leadership when it comes to military and the trust that comes with it? Yeah, it's really, really lovely, and the discipline is crazy.
I think one of the things it taught me was that I got so much responsibility at such a young age. And I think so often in the non-military world, we say, well, they're in their early 20s. We can't ask them to do hard things. It's like, yeah, you can. You absolutely can. People in their early 20s can do hard things. And so I have three 21-year-old sons right now, twins from my wife's previous marriage and a redhead from my previous marriage. And all three of them are doing very difficult things. And so I think that was one of the things that I really took out of the military. You get so much responsibility at such a young age. And I think there's this hunger in our societies for people in their early 20s want to do hard things.
Wow, amazing. I think just learning that at a very younger age is very, very interesting. Owing to the fact that society today will almost be like, no, you are still young. You don't have the experience needed to actually do this and that. And that sometimes kill a whole lot of dreams. Because being in your 20s, doing those difficult tasks reinforce these particular ideas that, yes, I'm capable of doing the big things, the difficult things. And going with that mindset, yeah, it's really more like a winning game compared to when you are still waiting in quotes that I have to be in my 30s or 40s before I do the most difficult things. And that was really inspiring.
I hope so because I think that I do a lot of work with university students who are trying to start their own business. And I've been starting, even when I was in the government, I had a side business. I've always had two or three businesses running at any given time. And I think one of the hard things that people can do, whether they're starting a cleaning business or an electrical business or a computer business, there are so many different things you can do that, okay, maybe it's not your day job. I mean, case in point, I have a day job right now where I analyze the semiconductor industry, but I also do other things, on the side. I think that's just going to be the future as AI really changes how we work. All of us are going to be doing that.
So true, so true. Yeah. Thanks for actually more like bringing that in. So you started out negotiations with Nobel Prize winning scientists. That is remarkable. What did that experience teach you about communications and trust?
Well, one of the things that was interesting was when I was a government negotiator, I was the middle. So in most negotiations, you've got you and you've got me, right? You're negotiating your side, I'm negotiating my side. What I learned at being a government negotiator was I was in the middle between the buyer on the government side and the seller out in the world
Yeah,
because I was supposed to be even-handed. We wanted to be fair to the 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 businesses
business.
because all the businesses were taxpayers. And so, you didn't want to make them angry. So that was really where I learned to negotiate. So when I was in London when the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, and that's where suddenly I'm negotiating these contracts with the Nobel Prize winning scientists that we couldn't talk to before that change happened. And what that taught me was that it was interesting. You think you're going to talk to a Nobel Prize winning scientist and they'll be arrogant or they'll be, they are the smartest people in the world. They've achieved these amazing things. One of the things it really taught me was some of the people at the very top like that are the coolest people you're ever going to want to meet because they're not trying to impress you anymore. They've already achieved everything in
Yeah,
life. I've met a lot of people like that who are just very spiritual or very accomplished, and we think of negotiation as we're going to push and pull back and forth. And they're just really chill about, I just want to find the right thing for everybody. And that has just been such an inspiration to me it makes me a terrible negotiator for myself. Whenever I bought a car a few years ago and my wife went to the car seller with me and we're sitting there and the car seller says, well, here's the price. And I said, okay. And she's like, aren't you going to negotiate? I'm like, no, no, I just don't negotiate for myself. She's like, give me that. And so she starts negotiating. She did a great job. She got a good deal on the car, much better than I would have gotten. But I think that's the thing. I just kind of come at it from a little bit more of a almost a philosophical or an
yeah,
intellectual rather than actually getting the stuff done. So now my wife negotiates everything for us. If it's important for us, she's the one who negotiates, which is funny.
yeah. This is actually amazing. If not, I'm just hearing from you. I would have had this more like perception of those who are at the top. They don't actually more like doing the back and forth saying, no, this deal has to go this way. So even though I'm just hearing from you, my idea about negotiation is going to be more like, wow, it's a tug of war. This guy is trying to secure his own end, is dragging the rope, and this guy is trying to secure more parts. And
Right. And so often for me, the way I negotiate is you want your thing, I want my thing. And so I'm not going to convince you to want my thing. And you're not going to convince me to want your thing. So what I do as a negotiator is I think about what's a third different thing that both of us would want enough to give up what we want and go get that. And I think that's where sort of my approach to negotiation happens. I think in terms of what is something we could create that's different together. And that is a very different approach to negotiation that it works in some areas. It does not work when you're buying a car, just, but
yeah.
but it works in a lot of other areas.
Yes, so true. Yeah, so true. Yeah, thank you. So many people actually struggle with change. How did you personally develop the adaptability that allows you to move through different industry, from tech to gaming space?
Wow. So I think couple thoughts. One is whatever you're doing, there are always pieces of it that will work other places. So it's not like you make a move from tech into gaming or military into oil and gas and you have to start over completely. So often you have skills that you've obtained over time. You're just using them in a different way. So that's one way to think about it. But I think the other key is realizing that you're starting over mentally. You have to learn everything again. And more important, I think, than being smart is being able to learn. I know a lot of smart people who can't learn. They coast on it because they've been really smart their whole lives. They haven't had to go and learn something new. It comes easy to them. Whereas when you're making a change in between career fields or companies, you have to be really curious and go and learn and want to learn. So I think that for me has been the biggest piece of it. I have so many things in my background only because I'd get to a certain point and I would say, okay, I just did it when I exited my startup and I jumped into these AI companies. I realized I'm not going to learn a lot about AI in one place. I need to go to a bunch of different places to learn about AI. And so that was one of the reasons I made the jump I did. It's not like I wait until something forces me to jump. I realize I want to do this next, and then I'm the one who jumps.
Wow, wow, amazing. Such a level way of looking at it. And yeah, staying curious and yeah, learning what it needed to actually more like put it work. And I think it's very, very key, especially in this digital age where a whole lot of things are happening at a very fast pace. And yeah, even being
Very.
curious, you have to take action very fast. Otherwise, it's just more like a mere word. If you didn't take action, so actually more like move towards what you really make reference of. Yeah.
Very true.
So you said you have helped more like shift fear-based our team into opportunity-driven ones. What does fear-based our leadership look like in actions, and how can leaders break out?
And this, I think, is something very good for people who are running service-based businesses. Fear-based leadership is a few years ago, I realized I had one tool in my leadership toolbox. Whenever I had a problem, I'd open up my leadership toolbox and I had one tool, and that was fear. And the fear was, do this or I'll fire you. Or, you're lucky to be working here. Or, those things that employers tell people that
Yeah.
create fear. What changed for me was when we started Palisade Compliance, I had been working at big companies that did fear-based leadership for 20 years. And so suddenly I'm running my own business. And there were people, still are, Palisade, still a terrific company, who are the only people in the world who know how to do certain things. So I couldn't make them afraid because they would just shrug and say, "What are you gonna do? Fire me? There's nobody else in the world who can do this." So I'd come in and I'd say, "You need to do this." And they'd say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'll get right on that, boss." And I realized I have no other tools in my toolbox but fear. And so that was the thing for me. So when I think about fear-based leadership, it is you are getting your way as the leader because people are afraid of the consequences if they don't give you what you want. And that works. It's like eating a lot of sugar. When you eat a lot of sugar, you'll get a short burst of energy, but it's terrible for your health in the long run. And so I think that's fear-based leadership. It works. I mean, you go make somebody afraid, they'll work their hearts out for you for a short period of time, but they can't do it for long. Or you'll run into, like I did, suddenly these are people who aren't afraid and you can't make them afraid. And then you don't know what to do as a boss. So that was the big thing I had to change. So this was about 2019. I realized that was a big problem I had, and it was becoming a bigger problem as I was running my own startup. And so I went and took classes on how to do leadership by listening to people, synthesizing what we're all trying to do. A lot of my negotiation skills could be reused in true leadership, and that was being more goal-oriented leadership than fear-based leadership.
Wow, wow. Amazing way of actually more like looking at this and it's even the fact that when it comes to especially when it's comes to service business, you might have a whole lot of teams who work with you and working with fear biz might not really, really work, being that you can't just easily displace them. And even from the point of connecting more with your team that you're actually working with, using fear biz does not actually more like create much bond, create more yeah, it doesn't create trust, it doesn't create a whole lot of this particular stuff compared to where you actually see it from the win-win perspective and find a way of encouraging them other than just if you didn't do this, I'm going to fire you. And it's really an amazing way that the way you actually look at it and you're able to kind of solve the problem, which is very, very key. So you have been deeply involved in sales accelerations. What is one mistake that slow down deals and how can business fix it quickly?
Okay. So let me think about it from the context of a service-based business. I think so many people, because one of the companies I'm mentoring right now through the University Business Incubator, it's a roofing company. They do roofing, and so when he and I were sitting down, we were looking at how do you speed up your sales, and one of the things we realized was he had never gone and figured out how do his customers actually buy something. So, when you're thinking about whether it's a facility services contract or that sort of thing, you should think about your customers and ask yourself, what's their budget cycle? When do they need to have budgets submitted to get their new fiscal year money to pay me money? Do I only get money from them when there's a crisis? The example I use in North America is an emergency plumbing company called Roto-Rooter. If you've got a toilet that's blocked, you'll pay them any money they ask for to come and unblock it. But they only work in emergencies. You can only afford them in a true emergency. The rest of the time, you go to a different plumber. You don't go to that one. So when you're thinking about it from a service-based business,
Yeah.
are you an emergency business or are you a sustaining month-to-month business? People buy those things differently. And so I think that the best thing that service-based businesses, I believe, can do to speed sales up is really get inside the head of your customer and ask yourself, how do they buy? And then when do they buy? And then how can I be positioned so that when they have the need that I am uniquely qualified to fill, I'm the only person standing there asking for their business.
Wow, wow. How do they buy? And when do they buy? And yeah, it's really amazing of actually more like looking at what's how your customers make decisions and how they came to arrive and reaching out. And that statistics alone could actually help greatly in respect of what you could do differently and what you can actually more like hook your message on as a business owner. Because now you're making decisions from the perspective of what you have seen them make actions with over time compared to just figuring it out. How did they actually buy? Because usually most times we didn't take those statistics, what you perceive as more like the service business operator compared to what the customer feel is way different. And this is really an amazing way of actually looking at it.
Right. Well, and the thing is, this is something that people can use AI for because I get that question a lot. I'm doing a class later this week in front of a bunch of small businesses, and there are lawn companies and electricians and all that sort of stuff. And they'll ask me, I keep hearing I should use AI in my business. What does that even mean for my services-based business? And this is one of those areas where I say, ask AI, I do this kind of business. Ask me questions. This is the prompt you would type in. Ask me questions about my business that will help you give me advice on my customers. Great.
Mm,
It'll start asking
good.
you some questions. Then what you do is you say, okay, good. I've now answered all your questions. Help me understand how my customers buy. Help me understand the questions I should be asking the next time I'm at a networking event and I bump into somebody who's a possible customer. What's something I could ask them about how they run their business that would help me understand them better? And AI can teach you all of that just by sitting there and typing it into the prompt. So it's a good place to start if you're just trying to figure out how to use AI in your services-based business.
Wow, wow. This blueprint you just gave is really, really profound. It's the fact that you could actually interact with AI to see what problem exists in your existing service-based business and what are the solutions and what are those things. How can you actually more like shift the narrative from the perspective of your customer base owing to what they keep asking per time that you are not aware of. But AI should have more like a glimpse of it every year, every now and then. Yeah, it's really amazing actually, which simply means AI is changing a whole lot of stuff, right? Yes, as a service
Yes.
business, we need to start answering questions that we don't even know exist yet, so that we can position ourselves as more like a key influence when it comes to that service we are offering.
It's very true. Very true. I think there are so many people who say, look, I will start figuring out AI later. And just because it seems overwhelming. But this is the first technology we've ever had as humans that you can ask the technology how to use it. You couldn't walk up to a refrigerator and say, how do I use a refrigerator? It just sits
So
there,
true.
looks at you, right? But with AI, you can sit down with the prompt and say, I run an electrical business in this town, in this country. How should I be using you to make my business grow? And AI will start telling you how you should use it, and it'll hold you by the hand and take you through it. No other technology we've ever had could do that. And it'll do it for free right now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
amazing, amazing. Thanks for that. So many small business owners, especially in trade, struggle with negotiation. What is one
mhm,
mindset shift that can help them negotiate better, even without formal training?
okay. One of the most important things is don't worry about price. Everybody gets hung up on, I want to bid $30 an hour, or should I bid $32 an hour? So you get locked into, what price should I bid? What price do they want to pay? And the more you think about price, the more you are becoming a commodity. You are making yourself
Mm.
less valuable the more you focus on price. What I say to my clients is focus on value. And what that means is not so much a negotiating trick, but ask yourself, look, does that customer really care about price, or do they care about, I never want to be waiting for a service call? Well, that's not a price-based thing. So if I say, look, my competitors are all charging you $30, I'm going to charge you $35, but if you wait more than 1 hour for one of my people to come out, I will do this for you. And so you're now talking about something else they value than money. It's time. And so you start thinking about it in terms of, what does the customer really care about? And what can I do with that? One of the things I do when I'm talking to people about how to negotiate for their careers is they get really hung up on their salary or their wages. And I say there are non-money things an employer can do for you that is easy for them. So case in point, somebody's trying to apply for a job and they're going to get, 40,000 a year. Great. Well, you want 45,000. The company's not going to give you 45,000. You think, well, I guess I'm done. Well, then what you can say is, hey, could I have an extra 3 days a year of vacation? Or could my title be director instead of manager? Think about non-money things that the other side could give you that will make you happy, that will give you something you want. And so when I think about it, the most important single thing when I'm coaching people on how to negotiate is get away from just the dollars per hour or the money-based negotiation. It's important, but if you only focus on that, you're just a commodity. You made yourself cheap. So,
Wow, wow, amazing. I think this is really, really amazing way of actually looking at it, especially more like when it comes to service business. A whole lot of persons who offer service business, they are not really that time sensitive, and yeah, more like having that, seeing it from that particular end, that yes, I'm not just more like a community based, commodity based, more like when it comes to the dollar per hours and everything. If you could actually channel it to what their pay point is, especially when they reach out to service-based business, what their experience has been over time, and you being a different operator, you're actually more like not pegging it to the fact that yes, you could do it differently, faster, better, and more. So coming from that particular perspective, you can your pay could be way, way higher than just the way you make reference of this emergency or operators you make reference of. Their pay was very unique, very high,
yeah.
owing to when they are being needed, they show up more like within that space lag of time that you needed them. And their pay is, it doesn't make sense owing to it, very, very high, but the
And
fact that
that's the
they show when they need to show.
Well, and that's the funny thing, because that gets back to knowing your customer, because case in point, the emergency plumber, because I got to tell you, anytime in my house I've ever had a toilet back up, it's been on Saturday afternoon when my normal plumber is not available and I've got a house full of people.
Yeah.
Now I'm paying $1,000 for somebody to come out and unblock that toilet. But that is the very high pay, because the only thing that matters to me then is time, not money.
Yes.
Well, if it happened at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, money would matter a lot to me, and
Yes.
I'd go to my normal plumber, and I'd pay a lot less. But so when you're thinking about your business, think to yourself, okay, so everybody thinks, well, that means I want to be in the emergency response business. Okay, that's fine. But there's a problem with that, because yes, you can charge very high
Yeah.
money, but it's really hard to be the one people call when they truly have an emergency. And when you try to grow your business and now do dishwasher installations or bathtubs or other things, they're not going to pay you, because the perception of you in the marketplace is you're expensive because you do emergencies, and nobody has ever had a dishwasher installation
Yeah.
emergency.
That's
There's
so
just no
true.
such thing. So I think that's the thing to think about with a service-based business, I believe.
It's amazing. Thanks for actually like bringing that up. So you talk about our career narrative, but not just a resume for someone listening or who is trying to grow or pivot. How can they build the stories for that opens door for them?
Very cool. Yeah, I think one of the big mistakes people make with networking is we think we're going to tell one story about our past that will wake people up to they should hire us, they should go on a date with us, they should buy from our business. So we try to tell stories that make us look good, and we try to put all these facts into them. And really, what people want is the thing I always tell people about networking is 99% of the people you meet at a networking event cannot help you. They absolutely cannot help you at all. But 100% of the people you meet at a networking event know somebody who could. So it's not about selling them on you at a networking event. It's about you educating somebody enough about you that when they talk to somebody else who does need you, they know what to say. And so when I think about the narratives and telling stories and story arcs and all that kind of stuff, it really gets down to think about how you either sell your business or want to get a job or whatever else it is. What do people need to know about you that will give them the information they need to make the decision you want them to make? And that's what it's all about. It's about education, not convincing. When
Convincing.
we think about sales as I'm going to convince somebody, that's a struggle. When you think about sales as I'm going to educate people, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think this is very, very key, especially in this data age where a whole lot of, yeah, even customer does not want to be, yeah, their perception of what sales is or so different, being that anytime they see any salesperson, their attention is more like, yes, it's in to collect the dollars again. It's in for the dollars, it's in for the cash, it's in for the rating. And changing the narrative to more of, yeah, just go there, give your concrete information on what you do, what that feed entails, educated them about it. Yeah, it make it more like a pretty way of actually more like just having a nice time, not necessarily selling. But the fact that anywhere it pops up where they are having discussion around that topic, definitely you are going to kind of flash in the line, being that your stories and everything you actually more like educate them on while that conversation was going in really, really help greatly. Compared to you just convincing them, and people does not want to be sold. And yeah, so it's really a level where I'm actually more like, yeah, selling yourself, telling the stories without necessarily being, yeah, CC informed.
Well, yeah, and we always think about it in terms of I'm going to tell a story. Like, case in point, I always tell the story about negotiating with Nobel Prize winning scientists. I always tell that story because it's impressive. And people are like, wow, he must be really smart because he's negotiated with really smart people. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to get across. But then I tell the story a different way to become a lot more humble and say, yeah, I went from buying ladders to doing that. What a jump. That's crazy, that jump. And you kind
Yeah,
of heard me do it at the early part of this that yeah, the military doesn't care whether you can or not. They just, they're going to make you do it and you're going to figure out how. And so I think you can tell the same story for a whole bunch of different reasons. And that's probably something to think about when you're trying to either sell for your business or when you're trying to put yourself out there to get a job. It's okay. The people who can give me what I want, what do they need to know about me? So they want to. And that's all it comes down to.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So your career has actually more like touched many sectors. Which industries or experience taught you most about people?
Ooh, wow. About people. Okay, weird. It's interesting. The one that taught me the most about people was the oil and gas industry, which you don't think about being a very people-oriented business. But when I left the military, my first big job after I got out of the military was with this oil and gas company, and it had been around for 150 years. This is an oil and gas company that President Lincoln gave the land to back in the 1860s, and I'm working for them in the 1990s. And everybody in that company was the friendliest, most cooperative group of people I've ever worked with in my life. And Aro, I hated every minute I worked there because I was in my like late 20s. I wanted to set the world on fire. I didn't want to get along with everybody. I just wanted to be, have people be impressed with me. And I learned so much about, wow, everybody's not that way. And I'm not going to be successful if I don't stop and listen to these folks and really try to find a way to get along. And then I went from that back into tech, which was very cutthroat, which was very, now I'm back in an environment where I can be as mean as I want to and all that sort of stuff. And just going back and forth between companies that are very results oriented and we don't care how many people get hurt along the way, or companies that are very people oriented and trust that if we take care of our people, Richard Branson says, if you take care of your people will take care of
Take
your
care of
customers.
business.
Yeah. And so I think it's been the back and forth for me. So the companies that I've gone to that I've been in a very results mindset, I go to a company that I have to learn about people, or I'm in a very people mindset and I go to a company where results are everything. So I think challenging yourself by going into a different environment at every step in your career is how you keep your mind awake.
Wow. Wow. How you keep your mind awake. It's really lovely way of actually I like saying things, and yeah, because people actually, especially in various fields, especially in tech, sometimes yeah, you can hurt people and do back and forth and still get away with it. But when it comes to service business, it's people oriented, and yeah, you have to add
Yeah.
a bit of care, and how people actually were like see a whole lot of things towards more like people, and yeah, this is really,
Yeah.
really amazing. So you actually mentor entrepreneurs at UCF Business Incubator. What is one piece of advice you often give to someone launching or scaling an idea, a new idea?
Couple so that's a great question. I think the most common thing I see with founders, people who start a business, and this is service-based businesses or tech business, we all focus so much on the offering. This is my package for air conditioning services, or this is my AI app that I'm going to put on the. We think so much about the thing we want people to buy that we don't think about the people who are going to do the buying. So I think that the most common piece of advice, and 99% of people who start companies have this problem. We focus so much on the offer, on the thing, that we forget that, have you ever heard the expression of that's a solution looking for a problem to solve? That's where that comes from. We've built a
Yeah,
solution. Nobody has the problem that solution solves, or they have it and they're not willing to spend money on it. And so that's I think so often I see businesses working backwards from here's the thing, now go find people to buy it. What I try to help them with is who are the people? What are the problems they have? Now let's figure out a solution we
how to
can
solve.
provide that solves the problem. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Such a lovely way of actually more like looking at business. Not just being curious about, yes, innovations or strategy that can actually more like transcend the particular ideas without even knowing that do people actually care about that problem? Are they willing to throw money at it? Because if at the end of the day they are not willing to throw money at it, we are just passionate in something that will not sell. So which simply means we are just just busying around doing things that are passionate to us, but passion does not say itself. People have to be willing. They have to be willing to throw dollars at it. And if they don't set dollars at it, at the end of the day, it's not a problem. It's just more like, yeah, you were just having fun doing what you want to do. And since it's good.
And there's nothing wrong with that until you
Yeah.
can't pay the rent. I mean, because I think so often we forget that we're allowed to have fun doing this stuff. We're allowed to enjoy what we're doing. I think but there is a trap. We can get too much in any way because you can do too much thinking about what your customers want. The classic quote from Henry Ford was, "If I'd asked customers what they wanted, I would have been building a faster horse." So because he was building cars. So I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
it all comes down to balance. You think about your customers, you think about your product, you think about your people, and you balance the three. So
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah. I think it's very key just where you make reference of parent Ford and the great innovators who have actually more like shaped the world and make us think different and see different reality is the fact that from the customer perspective, they understood what the mission is and looking at what is currently working, they know what is existing working, and now they are bringing more like an innovative way of actually more like solving that problem. So they understood this from the customer perspective, and also they see possibility of what is possible. I think it's still very risky being that it's writing a possibility. You don't know whether the world is going to catch up to the new innovations you're actually more like bringing in, which is that is why most times when they are doing that, they treat it as an experiment, being that might work, might not work, being that
I have gone out of business 3 different times by building a product that nobody wanted. That
ooh,
I knew it was so far ahead of its time. And what's always makes me crazy is 5 years later, that's the time for the product. So I do it,
ooh,
I try, I go out of business, and then 5 years later, somebody else does it, and the market's ready for it.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, when you're a one-person shop starting a business, no, you need to think about what do people want right now, or else you're gonna go out of business. The giant companies can think about what might people want 3 to 5 years from now and start setting the stage for that. But, unless your dad's rich, you're not going to be able to be in business for 3 to 5 years unless people are buying something from
Yeah.
you.
It's okay, it's okay. I think this is really lovely looking at this from this particular way, especially for those who are just new into entrepreneurship and doesn't have the necessary fund yet, and they are passionate and curious. Yeah, if you're passionate and curious, just better go somewhere they are willing to throw money at, so that at least you can figure out your bees in the meantime. But with time, when you have the means, you cannot think of, okay, what will they grow into to start needing in 2, 3 years or 4 years time, so that at the end of the day, you won't be the product where your life depends on it, and at the end of the day, the society have not they have not gotten to that particular point where they realize they need that product. And yeah, I think it's the balance between being innovative and solving your temporary need in the meantime so that you can stay alive.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is the thing. I have so many clients who are they're innovation directors at giant companies, and I say, okay, well, here's the thing: the company isn't counting on you to survive. When I'm dealing with a small business, the innovation is needed to survive, and I think that's the thing that innovation really depends on where you are and what you need to have happen next. And there's nothing wrong with saying, love this innovation. I want it to be the future of our business. But then what I do with my clients is I break down, okay, what are the steps towards that innovation? And what's a small step that we could take right now that's still on that road? And so I think that's the key when you've got a business. And one of my favorites, my air conditioning business, because I have an air conditioner, and so I have a company that comes out and services the air conditioner. They sell me this little device that screws into the drain line that keeps it from getting full of gunk. I live in the swamp in
Yeah,
Florida. So, things will move into your air conditioning drain line if you're not careful. Well, that's a total margin boost for them. They got into selling that one little piece because they know me, they know my problem, they know where I live, and they innovated a
a
solution to
solution.
that. And so I think it can be something that small that still and makes them a good extra 3-4% on my annual spend with them, that one little thing, and those add up.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's very, very key. As much as we want to kind of innovate stuff, that is the reason why we have to kind of our foot should be towards the customer too, being that they are the one throwing dollars to it to see what their perception is about the particular product. Yeah, especially when you know that your life depends on it and the company needs to survive first before you can actually more like think about innovative way, before the customer can actually catch up on a particular product. But for those very one where you know that, okay, I can innovate this, change these particular things on how it's been done, despite the customer does not know what is being needed. But if they have the problem, definitely they're willing to throw more like money at it. Yeah, to sort
Well,
it out.
one of my favorite old cartoons, and there's nothing more frustrating than seeing somebody trying to describe a cartoon. But it's these two men sitting in a cart. It's the Middle Ages. They're sitting in a cart, and the cart has square wheels on all four wheels. They're square. And there's a man standing by the side of the road with a wheel, a round wheel, and it's going to be so much better than the square wheels they were using on their cart. And the people in the cart are saying, no, 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 I can't even look at something new right now. I'm so busy with my square wheeled cart. And buy the round wheel. It'll work so much better.
Yeah,
But so often we are so mired, we're so stuck in the stuff that is urgent that we don't have a chance to figure out something that can make all that urgent stuff go away and be a lot easier.
yeah. Wow. Amazing. Really an amazing way of actually looking at things because it just dawned on me that the great innovators that we look at when it comes to Henry Ford or Steve Jobs and the whole lot of things we change yeah, the world about what we perceive about different things. It's the fact that even after they actually provide solutions to what we don't even think we needed yet, there were a whole lot of publicity on educating us on what does it stand for? How do we use it? How do we catch up? Being that they understood that, yes, that is the only way we understand, even if it was a problem that we didn't know much about yet, but the education is being needed to actually more like bring us into it. Being that, yeah, a creative product is one thing, educating more like your audience about it is another thing. Being that they might not even know what the problem they're having. Even if they know, they don't even know whether it's something that is very risky yet until you actually more like educate them in it. Then see some particular places where they could actually see things different. And I think it's really amazing what actually more like looking things and balancing between innovating and uh, yeah, bring your customer in onto it.
Well, and you may not be the one to do it. Everybody thinks about Steve Jobs and introducing the iPhone, but if he had introduced the iPhone 5 years earlier, it would have failed. What
Yes.
he needed was BlackBerry to go out and introduce, get everybody hooked on
Yeah.
email on their phones, and then suddenly when the iPhone came out, it was a more elegant way to do the thing the market now. And so I think when you're thinking about your business, all the way doesn't matter what kind of business it is. Think about not so much my customers don't want what I do today. Okay, what's in between where they are now and where you are? And is there something in the middle there that they do want to buy today? It may not be from you. It may be from a partner you could go create an alliance with. And everybody thinks about in service-based business, it's like, okay, I run a cleaning business. What's adjacent to that? Well, shredding, document shredding, that sort of thing. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to add, shredding to my cleaning service because I go out to my customer and I collect the trash from them. I'll shred it now, and then I'll charge them more for the shredding service. Well, I don't want to do shredding, so I'll partner with a company that does shredding. So,
That's
you
true.
start thinking in those terms, and that's how you get some
Yeah.
innovation that lets your business go where the
Yeah.
customers are going to end up.
It's
So.
okay. And that is really a pretty way of doing it, being that you won't have to incur a lot of cost of trying to start the trading business, which later on does not make sense or you didn't work out. But this very one is just more like yeah, partner with different organizations that does that, which make the burden easier for you and sustainable too for the business and the longevity of it being in business. And it's really an amazing way of looking at it. So after so many transitions on accomplishments, what does success look like for you today, Stephen?
Oh, wow. These are good questions. A couple of them I hadn't thought about. So I think my biggest thing right now is I am really enjoying learning. I think after so many years of I've been a chief operating officer, I've been a head of sales. For me right now, it's the thing I do every day is talk to semiconductor companies about what they're doing to make things faster and cheaper and really change the entire world. And it's a series of conversations, and in each conversation, I learn something. So my definition of success right now is I've had so many years of my career of going to meeting after meeting after meeting and not learning anything. And for me right now is if I have a conversation like this one and I learn something from it, this was a good conversation. And so that's what I define as success right now.
Wow, wow, amazing, amazing. So, what's to drive you forward with different couples of things you are doing? What to drive you?
I think the biggest thing right now is I'm working with a lot of investors who have put money into companies, AI companies or services companies particularly, and they're not seeing the growth that they want. They're not seeing the speed that they need. So that's a big part of what I do today. I work with clients who want their growth to happen faster. So that's what I do through the mystage2.com is really working with companies who are hitting that struggle. I've got a company that does drone inspection services. They fly drones around and those drones fly up to bridges and inspect them,
Respect.
trying to make that business grow faster. So just things like that. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I like making people's businesses grow faster. And then they get to a point where they don't need me anymore. And that's cool because there's always a business out there that wants to grow
Yeah,
faster. So yeah.
amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Stevie. It's really been an amazing having these conversations with you, especially with your deep insight on the topic. It's yeah, thank you. So, Stevie, how can my audience learn more about you, connect with you, and do business with you?
I think a couple of different ways. I'm on LinkedIn, and so we'll give the link to my LinkedIn profile. Love for people to follow or connect. That's one, and then the other is mystage2.com, mystage and the number 2.com. That's the thing I do for advising founders or accelerating businesses. So those are the two different ways I reach out to people.
Oh, wow, wow. Thank you for that. Definitely, the link is going to be on the show notes for my audience to easily reach out, connect, and to do business with you. Yeah, Stephen, it's been an honor having you on the Aro Benaiah Show. Your journey shows that leadership isn't just about title. It's about adaptability, communications, and helping others grow through change. To everyone listening, you can learn more about Steven's work and insights at my stage. This is Aro Benaiah Show, reminding you that growth doesn't come from staying comfortable. It comes from learning, adapting, and moving forward with purpose. Once again, it's really a pleasure having you on the show, Steven.
Thank you, Aro. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much.